in respect of the burning of fossil fuels and obviously contributing to the emissions in the society. This obviously will give rise to a global concern, and therefore not to mention, of course, the impacts it will have with respect to health. And therefore the International Maritime Organization went to work on a number of protocols to ensure that they did their part and make sure that member states who form are members of the IMO, that they do what they believe should be the right thing in respect of following protocols to play their part to combat the global climate change and obviously mitigate against the climate crisis. Of course, it is known that as a result of maritime transport, we can have approximately 1 billion tons of carbon dioxide annually being out there, accounting, as I'm told, for 3% of global greenhouse gas emissions from fuel combustion. So therefore, the Marpol Convention had 5 annexes to prevent, reduce, like I said, and control maritime pollution. We obviously, Annex number 1 will deal with, of course, oil and oily waste. Annex number 2, the noxious liquid substance in bulk. 3 harmful substances in package form, and of course, sewage and garbage. These 5 annexes will be incorporated into the soon-to-be debated Merchant Shipping Act and regulation and the attendant regulations. Of course, Barbados became, and at least I repeat it, I'm not sure if I said it on the last occasion, but Barbados became a party to the Marpol Convention Annex 6 on April 5th, 2024, when I indicated subsequently an audit was done in respect of this. But prior to becoming the Marpol Convention in respect of atmospheric pollution, Barbados still had a duty under the Article 2.12 of the United Nations Convention on Law on the Seas, Law of the Sea, to which Barbados is a party, which encouraged states to adopt laws and regulations to prevent, reduce, and control pollution of the maritime environment from or through the atmosphere applicable to the airspace under the sovereignty and to the vessels flying their flag. Of course, Barbados delivered on its international obligations, as highlighted earlier, and I just make the point, and that we obviously as signatories will have to conform to those conventions. The Marine Transport Emissions Bill, and I'll go, Mr. Speaker, straight to the bill. In terms of the objects and reason, it says that a bill would provide for the implementation of the 1997 Protocol to the International Convention for the Prevention of Pollution from Ships, MARPOL 1973, as modified by the Protocol of 1978 relating thereto and by the Protocol of 1997, the implementation of Article 212 of the United Nations Convention of Law on the Sea 1982, and of course the implementation of the Technical Code on the Control of Emissions, the control of emissions from ships that exceed 150 gross tons, and of course the promotion of energy efficiency in shipping and related matters. Mr. Speaker, at clause 5 of the bill, it also sets out other objects of the Act, which I would not go into at this point in time, and it speaks at clause 6 to the application. And I want to once again take a moment to address this issue, because we would have brought, like I said, the domestic shipping vessels bill to this Parliament, I believe it was on June the 7th. And on that occasion, I made the point that the bill obviously spoke to smaller vessels. On this occasion, the Act is very clear at clause 6, where it exempts all Barbados ships below 150 gross tons. In this case, all ships in excess of 150 gross tons obviously would come under the scrutiny of this legislation. It is important for us to set that out because I don't want the message to go there that smaller vessels obviously would be a party to this particular bill. So in essence, the Marine Transport Emissions Bill does not apply to small vessels of 150 gross tons and below, or vessels of 24 meters in length or less, to which the Shipping Domestic Vessels Bill will apply. And I believe it was necessary, Mr. Speaker, to put that there first. Now, the other issue, Mr. Speaker, as it relates to the Marine Transport Emission Controls Bill, is the framework that it sets out. And the framework is clearly set out in the act, in the bill. It sets out the applications to certain processes in respect of the MARPOL Convention, but it also exempts, where necessary, certain fuel oils and emissions from the scope of the regulations. For example, if the intended mission is for, or purpose is for research and testing, then there's an exemption. If it is obviously for any life-saving issues, of course, it is exempted. If there are any emissions resulting from damage to a vessel or equipment, except where there's a failure to take all reasonable acts, that's also exempted. And any emissions with result from the incineration of substances that are solely or directly the result of exploration, exploitation. So those are set out Clause 7 of the bill, and we will also note at Clause 8 that there are also other exempted emissions. In respect of the Act, the administration, Clause 9, the director shall be responsible for the general management and administration of this Act. I would have spoken to the issue of the director when we last met on June the 7th when we discussed the Domestic Vessels Act, so that's nothing new. Of course, the director will also have technical expertise in the form of a technical manager and others who will be responsible for addressing these matters as it relates to the general administration of the legislation. And that director, of course, will be Director of Ocean Affairs. So all the changes that we're implementing in respect of shipping will have an attendant job creation and job opportunities, because you will not only have a Director of Ocean Affairs, you will also have a technical manager, and you will also have to have persons who are specialists in energy efficiency systems and the like. So this bill and the series of legislation that we're bringing to the Parliament will certainly create avenues for increased employment, but also specialist employment. And this is the area, as we well know, is a specialist area, but also an area that will also allow many young people who are interested in a career, especially in maritime, to give them another opportunity to focus on such careers. So I just thought I'd make that point in respect of the bill, the application of the bill, and also the opportunities that will result from the bill. The other issues that we intend to discuss, Mr. Speaker, those issues relate to the general operations of the bill. And I'll take you to Clause 10. And Clause 10, obviously, as I indicated, places duty of the administration, and that will obviously fall under what will soon be established as the Barbados Maritime Transport Administration, which will obviously be a division of the Ministry of Tourism, which is currently now referred to as the Shipping Division of the Ministry. If we go to, as well, Clause 11 to 30 of the bill, it outlines the regulatory regime consistent with the IMO requirements, measures to prevent air pollution from shipping activities, to prevent, like I said earlier, reduce and control atmospheric pollution owing to ship source emissions. And obviously, it also addresses the issue of merchant ships who burn fuel for energy and emit several types of air pollution as byproducts. Those are clearly covered within the bill. Now, one might ask, Mr. Speaker, why is this necessary? Because greenhouse emissions such as carbon dioxide, and sulfur, and all the other components, include particulate matter, contribute to climate change. But it also impacts the ocean acidification, and that is something that we have to pay particular attention to, because it not only creates conditions whereby minerals used by oysters and clams and lobster and shrimp and so on, and other marine life, but it also severely damages coral reef. And that is something that we have to pay significant attention to. It also, there are contributory causes to human health as well. Obviously, if the marine life continues to be contaminated, then obviously, and there's human exposure, it could create obviously significant health risks to us as well. So we're adjusting the emission standards required for porting in Barbados to ensure that we help to protect the global environment. In respect of the emissions covered in relation to the surveys and compliance and verification under the International Air Pollution Prevention Certificate, you will have obviously the ozone depleting substances. You have the nitrogen oxides, the sulfur oxides, the particulate matter, and of course, the shipboard incineration. And of course, the International Air Pollution Prevention Certificate also contains a statement that the survey shows the equipment systems, fittings, arrangements, and materials necessary and to be applicable to Annex 6 of the MARPOL. Of course, if we go to Clause 19, it also sets out what is needed in respect of air pollution prevention certificates and, of course, certification requirements that the IMO has also imposed on fuel oil requirements for ships. And that's set out, as I indicated, at Clause 19 of the bill. And if you go to Clause 20 of the bill, it also makes the point that no person shall engage in conduct that results in the fuel oil with a sulfur content of more than the limit set out in Section 19 being used on board a vessel as fuel or carried on board a vessel for use of fuel. And it sets out whether it's in Barbados Territorial Sea, whether it is located as a vessel in Barbados that is beyond the exclusive economic zone, which I'll come to a bit later in the discussion. So those are set out there at Clause 19 and 20. When we moving along, when we look at, and I'll take you to Clause 30 as well, because we have in between there a number of what we call necessary elements, include the flushing fuel oils systems, of course, the record of the prescribed fuel, which must be documented, and I'll speak to that a bit later. It talks about port state inspection, air pollution from ships. But when we go to 30, port state control and violations and enforcement, it says, in addition to any certificate issued on this act, the following shall be made available to the officials. And this is, of course, to the port state control authorities. Bunker, delivery notes and samples, including the collection and analysis, oh Lord, Mr. Speaker, the analysis or collection and analysis records issued by fuel oil, non-availability reports, and related communications. Those are all set out in terms of what, at Section 30, the requirements of the port state control. When we go to Clause 31, Mr. Speaker, we also have, and this section obviously outlines the regulatory regime consistent with the IMO requirements and measures to ensure that we promote energy efficiency It says, so for example, at 31, that ships of 5,000 gross tons and above shall calculate the ship-specific energy efficiency design index. You will note, Mr. Speaker, that there are quite a few acronyms in here, but they're all explained in the when you look at the interpretation section. So not to be confused by anyone, we will have all those as they have listed there. It's, like I said, a very complex, a very technical subject matter, and therefore it was important that the drafters got it correct, and they did, and I must compliment them once again for the outstanding job that they have done. The requirements also have critical components related to the master of the vessel, who shall maintain and verify the energy efficiency of the vessel through her operational cycle. It speaks about the master of the vessel employing appropriate methods throughout the operational cycle of the vessel to monitor its energy efficiency, including Energy Efficiency Operation Index, and of course the vessel's energy efficiency management plan, which is absolutely necessary as we move forward. So those, I'm not going to go through all the clauses between 31 and 42. Suffice to say that there are key measurements that they have to follow, and those measurements will be followed and controlled through port state control. As it relates to the ship energy efficiency management plan, as I indicated, ships above a certain gross tonnage, they are required and engage in international shipping voyages. They are required, of course, to develop and keep an onboard ship energy efficiency plan in place. And that is also denoted at clause 38. Beyond that, Mr. Speaker, we also have matters relating to fuel consumption and reporting. If we want to ensure that we manage the emissions, it is important that we have a number of requirements, and consistent with the IMO's guidance, it is absolutely necessary for the ship energy efficiency master plan to be kept, and also for fuel reporting consumption to be recorded. And those are going to be explained a bit later in detail, and they're also denoted, they're also included in the bill. Clause, let's go through. When we go to clause 43 of the bill, and that's at part 5, it speaks about the nomination of surveyors and certifying of certificates. And this is absolutely necessary, Mr. Speaker, because the bill obviously has one component: surveys, verification, and also a certification regime for ships. Again, consistent with the convention, it is important that these surveys be done. And of course, at 43, it sets out that the director shall, with their written approval of the minister, nominate a marine surveyor in respect of, like I said, vessels 400 gross tons and above, the platform on which to be engaged in voyages, the vessel, other than a vessel of Barbados, 400 gross tons and above, belonging to another contracting state. And it sets out very clearly what is required in respect of the emission reduction measures. And those are found at clauses 43 to 44. In respect of part 6, clauses 45 to 55, the bill specifies additional emission reduction measures that ships may undertake. For example, the IMO provides various mechanisms for ship owners to use in order to continuously reduce ship-generated emissions. And at 45 of the bill, you will note, for example, where it outlines emission reduction measures for ships, including the installing an exhaust gas cleaning system or exhaust gas treatment systems on board ships to reduce emissions, equipping the vessels with vapor emission control systems, retrofitting or replacing the vessel's refrigeration plant to use refrigerants with zero ozone depletion potential, employing any other economically feasible and environmentally safe technical or operational measures to reduce ship emissions. Clause 46 It speaks to the nitrogen-specific emissions reduction measures for ships as stipulated by the IMO and, of course, in their technical code. Those are all listed there at Clause 46. Of course, the IMO is in the process of upgrading and updating, I should say, its carbon intensity indicator requirements framework. And therefore, at Clause 49, you will note that the requirements there the requirements there in respect of the merchant shipping notice. What it says here at Clause 49 is that the administration, again referring to the Maritime Administration, in consultation with the port, in consultation with the port and relevant stakeholders, that they should specify the carbon intensity requirement for Barbados registered vessels and foreign registered vessels in Barbados's territorial sea and respect of a shipping notice. So that's all set up there. Obviously, the carbon intensity indicator will be rated on an annual basis to a rating scheme designed by the IMO, which again is intended to further reduce the ship's carbon emission intensity under the Carbon Intensity Initiative framework, which ships will be required to calculate in respect of the attained energy efficiency of existing ships and the associated carbon intensity ratings. Of course, when we go to Part 7, we also have the issue of fuel options and fuel compliance. At 56, it makes the point that of the bill that marine fuel suppliers may use fuels listed in subsection 2. Those are all satisfied there, and it goes on to make the point that the register, that it now now calls for a register of regulated marine fuels to be listed within, obviously, the administration of the ministry. And that register of regulated marine fuels will have to be administered by the administration in consultation, of course, with the ministry responsible for energy. And there's also a requirement for local fuel suppliers. And that requirement is listed at Clause 58 of the bill, where it says that local fuel suppliers who supply marine fuels to ships shall ensure that such fuels are compliant with the MARCOL Annex 6, this Act, and any other enactment made under this Act. So it places not only responsibility on ships, but those entities who are also fueling ships in Barbados. Of course, there will come a time when we will want to ensure that we have more shore power facilities on the island. And when we have more fuel shoreside power initiatives being integrated at the Bridgetown port, that would give us greater opportunities for improvements in respect of emissions. Mr. Speaker, if we, in respect of, I'm not going to delay the House in respect of the fuel oil sampling, which is noted at Section 66, and the obligations of the local fuel suppliers representative. Those are adequately covered in the bill. But if we go to Part 8, Section 6, Clause 69 of the bill, where it says the development of a marine emissions permitting scheme, regional arrangements. And it basically says that Barbados may enter into regional arrangements for the development of a marine emissions permitting scheme, where they can set a cap on air emissions from ships navigating in Barbados and the wider Caribbean. They could also set a cap on air emissions from platforms operating in Barbados and the wider Caribbean and create permits up to the level of the cap. So those are all noted at Clause 69 of the bill. What we are trying to do is to ensure that with this new arrangement that Barbados can enter into any regional arrangements for the development now of a maritime emission schemes, emission scheme. And that is very critical to our future, as I will come to the whole issue of the green shipping corridor and those matters. So that is just to let the House know in respect of the Part 8, in respect of the duties there. When we go to clauses 70 to 82, clauses 70 to 82, it also sets out the duties of the port. The bill, of course, will indicate it here that they will have to provide adequate waste reception facilities. They will also have to put in place port air quality strategies and management systems. They will have to be conducting the internal port energy audits and undergoing external port energy audits so as to ensure that they have the ISO certification. It is interesting because this also now places an additional administrative burden, I believe, on the port. But of course, the port can well argue that they are ahead of the times and that they have started a lot of work in respect of this area. That has been my experience with the port. They usually like to jump ahead and plan ahead. And I don't believe that they will, at any point in time, disappoint the country. So they will continue to do what is necessary. But the point I made earlier in respect of the creation of jobs and other opportunities, as we speak specifically to the carbon footprint and the reporting responsibilities, it is necessary that not only will the port have to have a port energy manager, whoever so designated, but there's also a requirement for the port to have a climate change coordinator. These are matters that will rest with the port and the senior port management responsibilities as we continue to comply with the energy management systems at the port. So there's a whole section, and I don't want to say it relates exclusively to the port, but certainly those sections, sections 78, which talks about senior port management responsibilities, at clause 79, speaking to the port energy's responsibilities, and at 80, speaking to the port energy team's responsibilities. Like I indicated earlier, of course, there will have to be a climate change coordinator that will have to be, as a public officer, appointed by the ministry responsible for maritime affairs to ensure that the climate change coordinator does what is required and conforms with the conventions and, of course, the bill when it becomes the law. Of course, climate change adaptation plans are necessary as part of the ship's emission reduction strategy, and those are settled at clause 82 of the bill. We also look at part 9, the verified control emissions and use strategy for marine diesel engines. Of course, that is very important because we cannot function in this environment without attempting to combat or reduce emissions and still maintain systems that we had in the past. And therefore, the bill specifies ship engine-specific emission regulations, regulatory regime. It outlines the requirements of the IMO that an engine International Air Pollution Prevention Certificate shall accompany a ship's engine through its lifetime and shall be available on board the vessel at all times. It also speaks to the engine International Air Pollution Prevention Certificate is a ship-specific instrument to verify that the ship's engine is compliant with the IMO air pollution prevention requirements. And that is settled, as I indicated in the bill. When we go to clauses 97, I'm not going to bore the House with all the marine diesel emissions control strategy and the like. I'm sure members would have already read that. But when we go to clauses 97 of the bill, and clauses 97 to 109, those, just getting here for you, 97 all the way through to 109 of the bill. It sets out the framework for the management of exhaust gas cleaning systems used by ships. Exhaust gas cleaning systems are commonly referred to as scrubbers. These scrubbers obviously must be regulated. And while they are good for the atmosphere as they help ships to reduce emissions, they're bad for the marine environment as they wash water, and they obviously can impact and lead to contamination and, of course, lead to serious environmental damage. So the bill sets so clauses 97 to 109, what is required. A duty, like I said, to prevent the marine environment from the exhaust cleaning systems, exhaust gas cleaning systems. It also sets so at 100, clause 100, a prohibition on the discharge of the exhaust gas cleaning systems, and it also speaks to the Port Air Pollution and Emissions Control Department, their role in the matter, as well as the exhaust gas cleaning water wash discharge for transiting vessels. The fact that wash water should not be discharged, or if it's discharged, it has to be discharged in a manner once it's been tested. So those are all clearly identified in respect of the testing and what is required in respect of the IMO MARPOL Convention. Of course, we well know that Barbados' marine environment is critical to our continued survival, and the development and impacts of water wash obviously could cause serious hazardous substance leading to toxic metals, particulate matter, and other pollutants. And we are well aware that these pollutants have been linked to cancer and the reproductive system within the marine mammals, so including obviously the bioaccumulation, acidification, as I indicated before. So the bill takes all of that into consideration in respect of the MARPOL Convention. At clauses 110 to 133 of the bill, obviously this is the section that is a miscellaneous section of the bill. It speaks to sustainable economic development initiatives. That is at clause 110. It also goes on to speak to the fact that ships can have, that Barbados as a state can enter into a green shipping corridor. That's at clause 111. And it makes provision in the bill at clause 112 for the establishment of a green shipping corridor for Barbados. Of course, when we speak to the framework for port-to-port zero emissions through trading, it is important that we recognize the importance of the green shipping corridor. And I'll spend just a few minutes, very briefly, on the issue, because the green shipping corridors are obviously routes that lead to greener, cleaner shipping, both for the cruise industry as well for the other maritime segments that stand to benefit. And the green shipping corridors link ports that support zero emission fuels, and that they're showing great potential as a way to accelerate the maritime decarbonization. Of course, once you have a link that supports zero port emissions, carefully designed ecosystems will also ensue. But beyond that, and as we well know, that a lot of the green shipping corridor recommendations would have emerged when they had COP26, I believe it was in Scotland. It was born out of the concept at COP26 in Scotland when the global environment hosted the summit in UK. The green shipping corridor obviously was a part of that decision. And you also have within the green shipping corridor, it was agreed to by 22 countries at COP26. Those countries included Australia, Canada, Chile, Costa Rica, Denmark, Fiji, Finland, Germany, Italy, Japan, and the Netherlands, of course, Norway, Sweden, Singapore, United Arab Emirates, United States, United Kingdom. That declaration obviously will be followed by others to come. But obviously, when you look back at COP28 in the United Arab Emirates, they saw the announcement of new shipping corridors, including one from Canada's west coast to Korea and Japan, one in the Caribbean, and another between Houston, the United States, and Belgium. So we are beginning to witness the ongoing commitment to the green to the green energy corridors across the globe. So the legislation obviously makes provision for the relevant factors in respect of the establishment of the green shipping corridors. And of course, amendments to the green shipping corridor order could happen because at 115 it says, clause 115, the minister may, after consultation with stakeholders, amend an order made under section 112. So it gives us the latitude and the scope to have regulations rather than having to come and amend the act on occasion. The designation of emission control areas, very important, clause 117, where the minister is desirous of designating an emissions control area within a national port or an offshore area. The minister shall submit proposals to the IMO for the designation of an area. So in other words, if Barbados agree that we want to have an area designated as an emissions control area, we will have to go the route of submitting the proposal to the International Maritime Organization. Of course, the bill will have some penalties for anyone who, for example, should present fraudulent information. There are also administrative penalties. Those are set out, particularly in this section, Part 1 in the 13th schedule, and is liable to pay the director an administrative penalty in the amount specified. And it is important because we need to have accurate information, we need to have truthful information, and therefore the onus will now be on the ship line and the owners and the master of vessels to ensure that they submit accurate information to the state and that they have a record of all of the requirements necessary. Of course, consistent with border control, we also have privileges and immunities for the Coast Guard. That's settled at 125. It says that members of the Coast Guard, when carrying out duties conferred under this act or any enactment made under this act, shall have the same rights, powers, and duties, and shall enjoy the same privileges and immunities as are had and enjoyed by a member of the Barbados Police Service acting under the Police Act Cap 167. And of course, there is protection from personal liability at clause 126. And again, it is necessary that I stress that, because when you are dealing with international shipping, it is important that we do not expose or leave any of our persons exposed to any future suits. So the immunities are settled at 125, clause 125 of the bill. At clause 128, the marine fuel safety regulatory framework. Obviously, at present, the Maritime Safety Committee of the International Maritime Organization is developing a marine fuel safety regulatory framework to ensure that ships can continue to operate safely as they transition to greener fuels. Safety of life at sea remains important, of course, in the face of climate change adaptation, and such measures must be put in place to ensure safe navigation of ships as they transport cargo and people, while yet aiming to do so in a very energy efficient manner. Clauses 129 to 131 of the bill provides for the post-enactment regulations of green shipping activities via maritime notices. Of course, maritime notices comprise of merchant shipping notices, maritime guidance notes, marine guidance notes and marine information notices. Such notices will serve as a tertiary regulatory instrument and will be used in addition to the secondary regulations in order to keep pace with the continuing and ever-revolving regulatory requirements of the IMO in the field of green shipping. Specifically, Clause 131 of the bill aims to ensure the longevity of the legislation, recognizing that science and technology on green shipping is not static, and as quickly as the science and technology should change and embraced by the shipping industry, so too our regulatory frameworks, of course, must change. And therefore, in this regard, Clause 131 provides for the placement of emission reduction standards and measures established by the IMO after the commencement of this act to be specified in a marine notice. Of course, we would have dealt with hazardous and noxious substances. We would have taken the decision within the cabinet to ratify the protocol. Obviously, that protocol, we're working with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade to ensure that that is ratified and that we move in that direction. Of course, when we speak to the future, we are also, Mr. Speaker, looking at the forthcoming Marine Insurance Industry Act. Obviously, the decarbonization of shipping will also play a significant role within the act. We intend to bring that bill to Parliament this year. Of course, the drafters are currently working on it, and we want to thank them again. But we are now going to be moving in a direction, and that, obviously, with the marine insurance, will certainly support the greenhouse gas emission reduction efforts in relation to shipping. So the Poseidon principles of shipping obviously will apply, but of course we will have an opportunity to go into greater detail when we come back to this honorable chamber to discuss that marine insurance bill. Mr. Speaker, the objectives here clearly, as I indicated, is that we want to ensure that we have a framework of technical operational support, and we also want to ensure that we have clean air quality in this region and contributing to the global effort. We want to have sustainable shipping and trade. We also want to have sustainable tourism practices. That's very important for us. And I will make the point that as part of the consultations when we were preparing for this bill, the shipping, the Marine Division, Shipping Department within the ministry would have obviously reached out to and would have had consultations with a number of persons. We also had to go external as well, and they had consultations with the cruise ship sector. It's very important because, you know, we depend on the cruise industry, particularly during the winter period and as we build up the summer opportunities. We have to ensure that, notwithstanding the requirement for us to comply with the IMO standards, as most countries have to do, we also made it our business to have consultations with cruise lines. One group in particular, I won't call the name on the floor of Parliament. They have a number of vessels that come to Barbados, and we felt it necessary to have that collaborative approach in respect of the consultations that are necessary. Of course, the ministry would have also conducted other consultations in respect of these matters. But I should also remind the House, because often when we are traveling and we are looking to increase cruise business, and we go to a lot of what we call the sea trade expositions, they often have sections that they speak to in respect of what they're doing to obviously mitigate the climate crisis and what they're doing to help with respect to climate change. And cruise ships are often now demanding that you have shore power connected to the grid when you come to a destination, so that the engine wouldn't have to, ship's engine will have to idle in port, emitting obviously the pollutants. That is something that I would say, and I would tell this Honourable Chamber, is dear to their hearts. Of course, as they look for the decarbonization and reducing fossil fuels, they also always encourage you to use electric buses. Of course, we don't have that problem. We have a number of electric buses in Barbados, and they're moving in a direction where they can have a lot of more fossil fuel-free equipment connected to any of their cruises when they come to a destination. So we are well on our way to obviously assisting with the emissions reduction in Barbados, and we will continue, of course, to build out the sector. We have to do what we have to do in respect of the targets that obviously cruise companies and other maritime companies will set, but we also have a duty to ensure that we help them along the way and make this place a safer world for all of us. I'm not going to go into all the schedules to the bill. I think there are approximately 13 schedules attached to the bill. Obviously, that incorporates what is required in respect of the operations of the bill when it becomes law. Of course, it will be of great help to the country and, of course, to those who have to work with the bill. Mr. Speaker, there's no doubt whatsoever, as I indicated earlier, that the maritime sector is a very vital contributor to the socio-economic well-being of a country, and Barbados is not to be excluded. The sector is very dynamic. There are a lot of changes coming out of the IMO. Fortunately for Barbados as a member, we have, whenever there's a committee meeting or whenever there's a General Assembly meeting, we have representatives from the ministry who would attend those sessions. And the good thing about Barbados being present at those sessions is that it allows our technical officers within the ministry to be even more exposed to what the new trends are in respect of shipping, for us to remain and to keep Barbados's maritime sector updated. So the fact that we brought the facilitation of the international maritime traffic bill here back in February, and it was enacted. The fact that, as I indicated not so earlier actually in my presentation, that we had the shipping domestic vessels suite of laws, which we debated in Parliament, I believe it was on June 7th. The fact that we are back here today, July the 9th, with another bill will speak to the work being undertaken by the Ministry of Tourism and International Transport. And I want, at this point, last time I did it at the end, but let me do it early. Let me thank the officers who would have put in a lot of time and effort to get this particular bill where it is today. Obviously, the director, National King. Also, we have Officer Dion Gibbs, got your name right? The acting permanent secretary, Ms. King, the ministry. Of course, we have officers from the port who always contribute, led by the CEO of the port, Mr. David John Marie, and Captain Carol Branch of the port as well. So they work together as a unit within the ministry. And I must tell you, it is a very highly technical subject matter, but one that I can assure the country that we have the necessary skills within the ministry and certainly within the country to ensure that we continue on the path that we're going. There will be other significant pieces of legislation to come, including the Marine Insurance Industry Act, bill. We will also be bringing the merchant suite of legislation, which will incorporate a lot of the conventions that we are party to within the legislation. And I must tell you, Mr. Speaker, that as we brought bills to Parliament, there's the interest peaking in respect of maritime affairs, because there are a number of persons who are now expressing an interest, not only on registering having their flag registered on Barbados flag registered on their vessels, but also the opportunities that as a population we can benefit as we build out these pieces of legislation. So I am very pleased. I'm very, very happy with where we're going. Mr. Speaker, I would not allow this occasion to go unnoticed without also talking a little bit about the activities being undertaken at the Bridgetown Port. I think it's necessary when we're talking about marine, when we're talking about legislation with respect to the IMO that the port should also be brought into the discussion. Of course, you will recall that the government commenced the construction of berth 6 at the port. That is expected to be completed, I believe, by October of this year. Of course, the reason why we have to expand the port, and we know anything connecting to marine works obviously is a major undertaking, a very expensive undertaking. But we have been getting more cargo on cruise ships coming to Barbados, and we simply don't have enough berths available. And what berth 6 will do for us is that during the winter period especially, it will allow us to have additional ships coming into port, and at the same time, it could also help us with the cargo ships that oftentimes have to remain outside of the berth because they have to stay outside of the port's facility because they don't have enough space. So we're addressing that, and that will obviously give us the lift. I can tell you that we will have, once again, an increased number of vessels coming to, cruise ships coming to Barbados for the next winter season. We're having more traffic coming through there, and it's important that we continue our planned works in respect of it. It's really designed for cargo, berth 6, but it's also an opportunity for us to have cruise ships dock in that area. The shallow draft redevelopment, that will be completed this year. It's almost there, about 96% complete, I'm told. That area, of course, will allow us to have additional berthing spaces for, and commercial spaces, but more so for a lot of the luxury catamarans that we have in that general area. That's important for the development of tourism and obviously for locals alike who will, of course, go on a catamaran and enjoy themselves. We have commercial spaces there, will be tenanted, and of course they will have a restaurant on the top floor. I must also take this opportunity to thank the ports team because they did the wave attenuation study, and when we had hurricane recently, it held up well. And I really want to say thanks to the port and all those who were involved in that project, because in the shallow draft, you wouldn't think that there was a hurricane impacting Barbados because of the wave attenuation studies that were undertaken and the breakwater facilities that we've put in place, and structures, that we've put in place, so they must be complemented as well. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank not only the management, but all workers at the Bridgetown Port for an outstanding job in what they had to do, what they had to cope with in the prior to the hurricane coming close to our shores, and also the post-hurricane arrangements that they were associated with. So I want to say a special thanks from this Honourable Chamber to all the port workers who were involved. That is not to exclude other workers within the tourism sector, but because we're dealing with this particular bill, I felt that I should enter into the record the government and certainly the ministry's thanks for the work undertaken, especially in the recovery, cleanup, post-barrel situation. So I just thought I'll share that with the Honourable Chamber. With respect to the bulk handling and aggregate facility, of course, we've received the permits and the business model now is being worked on. The waste to energy incinerator, which is critical again to emissions control within the port. Of course, the port will be acquiring a mobile incinerator for use during the transition to the commissioning of the waste to energy incinerator. And I believe that the incinerator will be delivered in March of 2025. Of course, the port will continue with their PV installations, the supply and install of moorings at Spikestown. They're just awaiting those certification. And of course, smaller luxury cruise ships are asking for such facilities in Spikestown. And the Honourable Member for Sapito will be absolutely delighted to hear that. And we are working assiduously to ensure. I think the Honourable Member is already aware of a number of tours within the St. Peter area that would have commenced in the last winter season, and therefore we have to continue to build out, and that's part of our growth strategy for the development of cruise in Barbados. We have a good growth strategy for airlift into Barbados, and we have now a growth strategy where we're trying to attract as many cruise ships to come. But the smaller luxury cruise ships prefer oftentimes not to go into the Bridgetown port, but they prefer to more outside of the Bridgetown port. And we are working, as I indicated, on those opportunities. Of course, reef protection is critical, and certainly Coastal will never allow us to do anything that would compromise, of course, the reefs in that general area. But obviously, there are opportunities that we're working on, even if we have to tender and bring them to that Spikestone area. But of course, I will have more another opportunity to speak to the matter in respect of the moorings at Spikestone. Of course, the port also had to engage in equipment acquisition. They would have purchased cranes back in 2024. They also have a marine hydraulic trailer, which is due to arrive this month, is it? This month, July, due to arrive in July. And of course, the ongoing digital products with respect of the maritime single window, the port community systems that they have. But there's one point, Mr. Speaker, that I would not want to take my seat without again thanking the port, and it has to do with the port's corporate social responsibility projects. We are well aware that as part of the development at Lands, and as I refer to it, some people refer to it as the area as you enter the port. That is earmarked for some development. We'll have a fishing Lands End Marina and a fishing facility, Farmers Mark. I'm correct to the Farmers Mark for that area. We've also at Pile Bay, in addition to the work undertaken, there will be new fruit and vegetable spaces at the Pile Bay fishing facility to support entrepreneurial development. The Millie Eiffel Fish Market at Weston in St. James is due for completion this month. And of course, we will have to know, based on what we've observed with the movement of the sea, we may have to have a retaining wall post around that general area, of course, to protect the area. Of course, you're well aware that the port would have built, again, as part of its corporate social responsibility, a fire service, and they maintain the building at the Bridgetown port. And it's not only exclusively for the use of the port, but it's also for the immediate surroundings and communities in the event that if there's a fire that they can respond to in short time. So, and then there are other, of course, projects that the port will continue to work on. The signal station that was refurbished in January of this year. There were construction of berths at the careenage. Those were completed in March. There was construction of a jetty for party vessels just below here. That was also completed in March. And like I indicated, the port would have constructed a fire station. So I thought it necessary during this debate to give an update on the projects being undertaken by the port as part of its corporate social responsibility. And might I add that those projects are funded exclusively by the Barbados Port Inc. So we have to thank them. In other areas, they would refer to it as give back, but the new found language would be corporate social responsibility. Mr. Speaker, in concluding, I really want to once again thank the officers for all the work they've done. This is a wonderful opportunity for Barbados to ensure that we not only become compliant, but we become leaders within the marine sector. The maritime sector is one that we value, like as I indicated. There's a lot of movement of cargo, We have significant movement of cruise ships transiting through the Bridgetown port. It supports the employment of many persons in Barbados, and for that we're grateful. And as we continue with our, not only with the port's development strategy, not only with the ministry's cruise ship strategy, growth strategy, not only with the ministry's plan to ensure that we bring legislation up to date, but as we look at opportunities not only for employment, but we look for opportunities for greater economic activity in Barbados. So, Mr. Speaker, I've been on my feet for a while. I hope I haven't bored this honorable chamber, but I felt it necessary, as this was a very technical paper, to go into some detail in respect of the matters relating to the maritime sector. So, Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I beg to move that this bill be read a second time. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Christ yourself.
Good morning, sir, and I'm obliged to you. The Honourable Member for St. Michael West Central ended by expressing the apprehension that he may have bored the chamber. I want to give the Honourable Member the assurance that he certainly did not bore me, and to further assure him that what he has done here today is extremely important. I want to say to him, through you, sir, that by his example, his work represents a zone of industry within the government, and it therefore stands out as a zone of industry within the government. And at the professional level in here, he always presents with a certain civility, sobriety, and he is generally well disposed as he brings legislation to this chamber. So I want to say to him that he need not apprehend that he has bored anyone. If he has bored his colleagues, well, he will have to resolve that with them. But he has not bored me, because I want to assure him that in an island the size of Barbados, matters that pertain to the marine environment are always extremely critical, since there is no part of 166 square miles that would become insulated from the marine environment. One of the first things I note about the bill is that it springs from certain international conventions, and to be more particular, it seeks to implement the 1997 Protocol to the International Convention for the Prevention of Pollution from Ships, 1973, as modified by the Protocol of 1978 relating thereto, and by the Protocol of 1997. Further, it seeks also to implement Article 212 of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, and we all know that is 1982. So that even if this is some 40 plus years later, we still welcome it. And as I've said, we applaud him and his ministry and his officers as representing that zone of industry within a government. A zone, yes. Why you come there?
Honourable Member, see your colleague has you laughing.
Yes, I did mention good-natured, and he belongs within the zone of the good-natured, if not within the zone of industry. You don't leave me.
Perhaps he will speak to you later.
Yes, he and I will meet in the corridor, and we will resolve all issues that are outstanding. But I was reminding the chamber that you have international conventions which give birth to the legislation. And of course, those international conventions lead to a country having international obligations. And if those international obligations are to become meaningful in Barbados, we are then required to incorporate them into the domestic law. And that is what the Honourable Member has done here today. He has reminded this country, as I said earlier, that when we are this size, there is no insulation from the marine life, and therefore it is incumbent upon an industrious ministry to protect the marine environment against pollution. And so what he does here today is to incorporate an international obligation into the domestic law. And who will resist him? No one will resist him, Your Honor. What he will find, though, and I have credited him with being that person within that small zone of industry, he will wish to navigate, and he will, forgive the pun, he will wish to navigate a way around the destruction to the reefs that were committed. And I don't wish to say it was committed by naivety and recklessness, but it was committed during the COVID period. And I wonder if this country is not due some audit as to the extent of the destruction to our natural reefs when we felt that a gracious offer of hospitality to cruise liners would have done this country some economic good in the future. Of course, I've said before that that has not come to any fruition, but I would want to urge this minister, and this minister particularly, because as I said, he presents with a civility, a sobriety, and a good-naturedness that really makes a parliament a good place to be. And I am so happy to be with him here this morning. I don't know if you heard the Honourable Member for St. Peter, but he is protesting that I don't give him similar praise. Looking as angry as he is on the subject of being good-natured, he protests now that he does not get that praise from me or anyone else. Now, what drew my attention was when the minister, the Honourable Member for St. Michael West Central, spoke of a marine hydraulic trailer, and he will understand why that would attract my attention. And if he speaks after I do, he will want to disclose whether that marine hydraulic trailer is the same trailer that we spoke about some few years ago when I entered into discussions with the government, and those discussions were conducted with another member of this government who presents with a certain civility, good-naturedness, and he came to Oystins. I would not identify him today. He knows who he is. He came to Oystins, and we had meetings with the boat owners at Oystins, and we had meetings with the engineers of Barbados, and an engineer from North America was brought into Barbados, and we thought that we had found a way to haul the boats out of the Oystins Sea into the boatyard. So if that is the same trailer that is due to arrive in a few days, we are extremely happy that it is coming. If it is not that trailer, we are not happy. But if it is that trailer, we are happy that it is coming, except that we are unhappy that it could not have arrived before Beryl. Beryl got here, although Beryl was moving slower, Beryl got here before that. So I hope that marine hydraulic trailer is that trailer for which we negotiated some 5 or 6 years ago. And as I said, those were extremely cordial negotiations, discussions. We had the entire fishing community of Oystons at that meeting, at those meetings. We had from the boat owners, the fishermen, the fish vendors, the entire fisher folk community was present when we had those discussions. Of course, I've heard the Honourable Member for St. Michael West Central say this morning that there's work to be done at Pile Bay, the sale of vegetables and so on. I've seen, I don't travel the West Coast very often, but that building went up so quickly. The one at Weston, yes, where Carew perished. And I heard the minister speak of a wall, a retainer wall, and that is wise, because whenever one drives by there, one remembers that the surge took Carew to his death. So that, again, if he thinks he's boring, he's not. Because he tells us of the importance not only of constructing very attractive buildings, and it is an attractive building, but he, in his sober manner, reminds us that the work is not done, that although the building is very pretty, he needs to look at the erection of a wall to protect the building. And it is interesting that these projects are being funded by the Barbados Port Inc. That is also a matter for some relief, because we live in a time in which the accounts of the state and the agencies of state need to be scrutinized, and I have no difficulty with the state of the management of the finances of the Barbados Port Inc. It seems that unlike certain other agencies, you expect me to say Comey, and I won't disappoint you, I say Comey today, that unlike Comey, it would seem that the Barbados Port Inc. exercises very, very, very prudent management of its financial resources, and they remain accountable to the people of Barbados. That is why I enjoyed this presentation. I really did. It speaks to prudence, it speaks to a measure of integrity in government that really others would need to emulate. And so, Minister, through you, sir, I want to give you the assurance that you have not bored me today. I want to compliment you, as I said, and I'll repeat it. It is worth repeating, even if some others feel a little hard done by, that similar praise is not reserved for them, but you come here with an example of sobriety and civility and good-naturedness that really makes this place a pleasant place to be. And as I said before, and I'll say it again, this place, thus far, is a very pleasant place today. The legislation itself, where it seeks to control emissions from ships and so on. You know, sir, that is very interesting, because the old postcards, those romantic publications, used to be of a ship sailing with the chimney at the top and smoke buffeting from that chimney and billowing. That is an even better word. Such a polite man for the time being. Billowing. I almost said something else, sir. I did say it to myself. But those old ships, those old representations of the old ships were well-meaning, to be romantic and so on. But today, in a new world, we discover that that would not have been to the advantage of the environment, and therefore we find legislation like this in which we attempt to control those emissions. Of course, the operation of the modern ship sometimes can be fairly insidious because one is not sure, unless one is involved in the industry, one is not sure how those ships emit matter that they do not wish to have on board. There's certainly no smoke coming up from those ships today. So we don't know, but I imagine that the port handles its business with some efficiency. So that in this short presentation, I just want to assure the Minister again that sometimes important matters are not exciting. And what he has done here today falls into that category of the unexciting, but the very important. And any initiative to protect this marine environment against pollution, and not only the marine environment, but to protect this land space from pollution is a noble initiative. And I want to support the legislation, I want to support the initiative, and I want to congratulate the Minister for once again. He was here a few weeks ago dealing with safety within the immediate marine environment of Barbados. As I said, with that admirable sense of industry, he comes back a few hours later to protect the marine environment against pollution. So I want to congratulate him. I want to say to him through you, sir, that I find no fault with the legislation. I have no doubt that it accords with the letter and the spirit of the international conventions from which it got its birth, and therefore there can be no complaint against what he has done today. The only complaint, as I said, would be, and I repeat, I must do this, would be to ask. I did not hear anything about Oistins. I heard about Pile Bay, I heard about Weston, and we did not hear about Oistins. But the order paper would indicate to me that that will be dealt with later today, having not been dealt with when it was first scheduled to have been dealt with. So perhaps I will defer that question to when his parliamentary colleague comes to us today with his much-awaited ministerial statement. And so, Your Honor, I am obliged to you.
Honourable members to make yourself.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to raise on this most important bill. I'll speak briefly. I know the Honourable Member who represents the Minister of Environment also wants to share a few thoughts. But I raise to support the Minister on this most important bill, sir, that is before this House. Sir, I would also like us to cast our memories back to an IMO audit that was done, sir, when we came into office in 2018, that highlighted a number of deficiencies in that entire space. In fact, sir, as far as I can recall, there were 20-something areas that the IMO highlighted. And the reason we subject ourselves to the thinking of the IMO is because we had signed on to a number of international conventions, sir, and by virtue of so doing, we had a commitment to do a number of things. And it is clearly, sir, an admission that previous governments had not done what was supposed to be done, considering the amount of work that was required when we first came into office. This bill, sir, that is before the House, is one of those bills, sir, that allow us, as the Minister said when he spoke, the Honourable Member for St. Michael West Central, when he spoke, sir, that this allows us to clarify and to tick off another one of those boxes. But, sir, it's not necessarily that we are seeking to satisfy the IMO, because this bill has lots of local implications for all of us, sir. And I will probably speak to some of those implications in a bit. I also want to remind the House, sir, that this bill applies to international vessels, as we discussed in a previous bill. the vessels that are 150 tons, well, over 150 tons. This is not a place, sir, we're not putting any onerous regulations on the local industry. And I just wish for that to remain clarified so that it's not carried from this place. This is on the larger vessels, sir, cruise liners, a lot of larger trading vessels, and so on, sir. It is also, in my opinion, sir, that there is no industry, none that I can think of anyways, that is keen to be regulated. There is no industry, we see it, sir, in our own local roads, sir. These that our industry may not wish to be regulated, sir. Those who ply their trade on the sea. Nobody likes to be regulated when regulation requires that you have to report and abide by a certain standard. And I anticipate, sir, that's the reason that we had when I was minister, and that is continued now with the Honourable Minister, the member for St. Michael West Central, those many meetings with the cruise vessels to let them know where we were going, sir, and so on. So we articulated a vision for this industry in a circumstance where it was clear to me that what existed before was a piecemeal approach to the management of that space. We articulated the vision, sir, and day by day, piece by piece, bill by bill, we are seeking to ensure that that vision becomes part of the Barbadian reality. We have to make sure so that these ships do not cut corners. We have to make sure that what we say we are going to do, we are in a position so to do. To ensure that as we build out the Bridgetown port, and you heard of some of the marvelous work that is being done in the port remains in my mind, sir, one of the better run, if not the best run, state-owned enterprise in Barbados. And one has to commend their sense of civil and civic responsibility. But, sir, when you think of all the work that we are doing as a government, sir, these are things that we have to do. If you consider that when you sign on to these international agreements, if these ships were to fail, it is not the ships that are taken to task, to a certain extent, but it is the countries. And that our reputation as a country, sir, the brand that is Barbados, sir, the brand that we always had and the brand that we have developed over the last few years as a country that is conscious and conscientious, sir, in relation to how we treat to our climate and to how we treat to our waters, sir. This would affect the country. It is important, sir, that we are able to do this kind of work, sir. We have to make sure that the ships do what they're supposed to do. And all of us know, sir, that this international movement is happening. Ships have already started going green, sir. They're building new ships, sir, that are built to be run by this kind of clean energy. The world is changing. And a lot of the things, sir, that stood in the past that we thought were absolute truths, sir, we now come to realize, sir, are subject to change. But I also want to make it very clear that this bill is not a burden on the small man. And that there are a number of benefits, sir, that I think will come to be experienced in the lives of ordinary people because of the work that is being done in this space, sir. I believe, obviously, that the port will have a big role in monitoring the things that we commit to doing today. A lot of this falls under port state control. We will have a big role in monitoring, sir, but I also suspect that we have an opportunity to create new jobs. And I know, sir, the ship registry obviously will have a role to play as part of flight state control, but I know that we have an opportunity now to start thinking about new opportunities for Barbadians, new jobs for Barbadians, new livelihoods, new industries that allow Barbadians, sir, to do things that we could not begin to imagine when we were students. The world is constantly changing. We have to be able, sir, to keep up with the changes in the world, sir. And I think that when you consider that we also brought here the Honourable Minister, sir, the member for St. Michael West Central, the bill that allowed us, sir, to bring into being the maritime single window. Because these things are all tied. People might see this as a piecemeal. You know, we brought a bill last week, we're bringing another bill this week. So these things are all related. And when this information is uploaded through the maritime single window, which allows us to do this business efficiently and effectively, we will be able to see if these ships are, in terms of their certificates, if these ships are up to standard. That whole digitizing, sir, and becoming more electronic, sir, is going to be very, very critical in terms of how we manage this space, sir. And I look forward to the work that is being done and the work that has already been done. So the process, as I remember and as I understand it, is to have marine surveyors nominated by the ministry in collaboration with our registry in London. So these are internationally acclaimed, recognized agencies that have the capacity to be able to monitor the work. Because when we bring bills, people often say, y'all bringing these fancy bills and y'all don't have the capacity to monitor. So I'm saying to the country, sir, that in working with our international partners, we will be able to monitor. But it also gives us the opportunity to develop new opportunities, new skills, new jobs for people who are in this space. So one of the most brilliant minds that I have encountered, the Honourable Member for St. Michael West Central spoke of her, sir, allow me to say Najla King. A Barbadian, sir, gifted beyond measure, who has prepared a lot of this legislation, sir, who is as knowledgeable. In fact, when I was at the IMO meetings a few years ago, one of the leading members of the IMO was flirting the idea that he would like to take her. And such was her commitment to Barbados, sir, that even for, I'm pretty sure, a lesser compensation, she chose to stay with Barbados to build up Barbados's marine space, sir. We have to commend her for the work that she continues to do, not only on behalf of the ministry, but on behalf of these countries, of the country, sir.
Honourable member, she's from St. Michael Central, just in case you don't know that.
Yes, sir. I know you're well familiar with her,
Just to let
sir.
you know that.
I know you're well familiar. In fact, sir, you supposed to be about her before I had her. I know that you are well familiar with her, sir. But, sir, I also think that we have at some point to reflect on our ship registry. I know that we had done a lot of work in relation to the registry. The ship registry presents the opportunity for us to generate significant revenue. You would come to find, sir, when we first came in, there was talk about, finding a new person to manage the registry. And after some analysis, we recognized that it wasn't necessarily only the registry, but that the architecture around the registry, the administrative and the legislative architecture around the ministry needed some work. And that is why so when we do all these things, we put Barbados in a position to generate even more money, more revenue. The Honourable Member for St. Michael West Central has already done above and beyond in terms of the revenue he's generated as Minister responsible for tourism and that civil component. But what I believe he will be able to achieve in the maritime space is going to be phenomenal. It gives us the opportunity, sir, to generate a lot more revenue. So, but I had said earlier that I believe that this bill will benefit the small man. It affects all of us, sir. We eat fish. The vendors sell it to us. They get it from the fishermen. The fishermen catch it from an ocean. We need a healthy ocean. And if there's anything that I remember during COVID, sir, I choose to remember things that the opposition leader does not choose to remember, my good friend. But I remember during COVID, when ships were not allowed to move back and forth, that the ocean replenished itself. The ocean is extremely resilient. And it tells me that if we are able to put in place the systems, to have the ships that are much more climate friendly, that we too, even as we continue to trade, because the truth is we have to trade, but we can do so in a way so that allows the ocean to replenish itself. To be able to make sure, sir, that we still have access to fish, to food, sir, to make sure that the ocean is healthy. What we are able to eat in Barbados to a large degree depends on the work that the Honourable Member for St. Michael West Central is doing. And because a big part of the marine pollution overall is marine pollution. If we can end marine pollution, we can make a significant difference to the climate in a positive way, sir. This bill, sir, factors in to the things that we are doing, sir, to make sure that the world is safe. The world is safe. Sir, even before we were exposed to the last hurricane, remember the port doing a lot of work to make itself energy efficient, to be able to offer cleaner energy, green energy to these ships. I remember, sir, in conversations with some of these ship owners and the major shipping lines talking about this before it became a popular thing to talk about, because the Prime Minister had led it in that space, sir. But, sir, we have to allow the fish to spawn, to develop, allow fishermen to catch more fish, sir. And, of course, I supported then, and I support now, and a conversation must be had, I suspect, the Honourable Minister responsible for the environment as efficient as he is, we'll be bringing at some point a conversation to the public on marine protected areas. So as to allow us, sir, to do all these things, sir, to allow people to be able to eat in the long run. And these are important things, sir, for us to discuss. Sir, I also feel that this would allow us to, even though the bill, I think, hasn't, it was brought to this house, sir, but it has to continue to be discussed, sir. In terms of local shipping and local sailing, this is not a local bill, sir, but if you have clean waters, people are more likely to want to sail in it. People are more likely to want to engage in domestic sailing. So when we were there, sir, we started a program on Swim for Life, which I know the Honourable Minister for Environment is working on now, and Sail for Life. Because Barbadians must have a command of the ocean. Sir, this idea that the sea has no back door and that you must not get to understand it is a nonsense. The sea is all around us now. And we must be able to have some relationship with the sea, sir. But, sir, the fishing industry is a complex one. I'm sure the minister responsible for fisheries will speak more to that. But I believe in the last few years, sir, we developed a legitimacy in the fishing industry, sir. In the work that the government has done in the last few years to ensure that fishermen were able to have a good livelihood, sir. If we look at the work that we did, sir, we repaired markets from Tent Bay, Oistins, Bridgetown, Pile Bay, Paynes Bay, Western, Spikestown, sir. In fact, the first market that we fixed was Oistins. The very first market that was fixed by this government was Oistins Market. And that conversation occurred, sir, that fixing did not just occur in a vacuum. That came as after a number of meetings with the fisher folk at Oistins, with the vendors, sir. When we went to Oistins, people have forgotten, but there were tiles, ceramic tiles in many cases, that were on the countertops, with large spaces in between where growth was, where bacteria was allowed to fester and to grow, and that overall the conditions were unsanitary. The countertops were raw cement in some cases. We had a situation at Oistins Market, sir, where we knew for sure that the conditions could not satisfy any international standard at all. We went in, sir, and we fixed it, so that Oistins Market became the very first market that was fixed. I also remember, sir, when we went to Oistins, there was a conversation around the jetty at Oistins, because the jetty, the government-owned jetty, at Oistins had been out of service for a number of years. And when we got to Oistins, there were fishermen there who were saying that the government, many governments, and especially many ministers, in the prior government and the MP for the area had promised, the prior MP, I don't mean the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, that they had promised when they were in office to fix the jetty. And they never did any work on the Bridgetown, on the Oistins jetty. A fisherman told me that no government cared enough about fisher folk to fix that jetty. It was this government, sir, that fixed the jetty in Oistins. So we fixed the market and we fixed the jetty. Work in Oistins has always been a priority for this government. No surprise, sir, that we then went on to fix Bay Gardens, because work in Oistins has always been a priority for this government. I would also like to remind the Honourable Leader of the Opposition about the conversation around the haul-out facility at Oistins. He was there. We had a very nice meeting, and there's no denying. And at the time, we really wanted to put a haul-out facility, a slipway or a lift at Oistins. We also had a private sector person, sir, a well-known private sector investor, who had brought in a person who he believed had the wherewithal and the capacity and the knowledge base to be able to do it, because Oistins only look so, but the waters at Oistins are not as easy to negotiate and to navigate if you don't know Oistins. And we brought in the private sector investor and the person who had brought the engineer. And I think the Honourable Leader of the Opposition may recall that at the time we determined that even with the solution we had in mind, it could not have worked at that time, and that we needed to go back and come back with a larger plan or a different plan. What we settled on with the fisher folk at Oistins, nobody was left in the dark on this. What we settled on, the MP for Christchurch South and myself and the fisher folk, was that in the short term, we would do the haul-out facility at Bridgetown, not abandoning Oistins, because we always wanted to go back. In fact, the Prime Minister made it clear even then that we had to do something for the fisher folk in Oistins to be able to take out their vessels too. And so you would find that there are plans before Barrel, now this is no knee-jerk reaction, to do a proper slipway with a proper lift at Bridgetown to allow the fishermen to be able to take out their vessels, sir. And quickly thereafter to do one at Oistins. You would also know, sir, that at Pile Bay, I don't know how far that has gotten actually, there was supposed to be a smaller slipway at Pile Bay that we really wanted to do. I remember the fulminations of the port at the time not wanting to overextend themselves. But I believe, sir, that these things, now what the climate change or climate crisis is telling us is that we have to have multiple areas to be able to take out vessels, sir, in the event that a disaster is coming up beyond a disaster. So that fishermen can take out their vessels and clean them and do the things that they do, sir. Because there is no guarantee that when you haul out a vessel and put it beside your house or on a pasture, as suggested by my friend, but if the hurricane comes, sir, that is safe. It is difficult to predict the weather. And Category 4 and Category 5 winds, sir, could be extremely dangerous. And so, like most Barbadians, sir, when the weather came, I prayed for the best. When I saw the videos of what was happening in the market in Bridgetown, sir, it broke my heart. I will not lie to you, sir. It broke my heart because I know we just built out some additional jetties in Bridgetown too. And for years, the barrier that we had there, sir, held. Fishermen themselves could not have predicted what was happening. The fishermen tell me at 5 in the morning, when they were communicating with each other, they were reporting that all was well in Bridgetown at 5 in the morning. And that whatever happened sometime after 5 a.m. And therefore, sir, we now know that we have to, as a country, as a region, smaller and developing states in general, sir, we have to rethink resilience. Sir, I say so because previously resilience meant that you would get hit by a hurricane in year 1985. You are unlikely to be hit again until year 1995 or beyond. Just calling years. The new climate crisis presents to us, sir, the most unfortunate reality where you could be hit by a Category 5 hurricane, sir, in June, the first ever recorded in history, and be again hit by a Category 5 hurricane in July. We have to rethink resilience. No person, sir, has a blueprint for what it is that we are dealing with. Nobody. And therefore, sir, leadership is often the art of informed improvisation. We have now to be able to reflect on the things that we did, sir, and to try new things. But the new amount of resilience that is required from us, sir, is not what we were used to. We have to be able to respond week after week in this climate crisis. And by response, sir, we have to be able to, not only the fishermen, sir, the houses that we study, sir, the areas that we know are low-lying, the areas, sir, that are prone to flooding, the ones that are prone to high winds and so on, sir, and to constantly, during this hurricane season, sir, constantly keep preparing ourselves. My mother used to say, we'll pass you, What ain't reach you ain't pass you. What ain't reach you ain't pass you. And what ain't pass you ain't miss you. But what ain't reach you ain't pass you. And so, sir, we got away somewhat lucky. I understand people say they don't want to say, so we are blessed. For now, but the hurricane season is long. Sir, I think that we are best engaged, all of us, in this place and other places and spaces, by putting our collective intelligence together and trying to determine what is going to be the response that allows a country as exposed as Barbados is to these events to allow us to respond, sir. I cannot see this as a time for political posturing on any side. That the only thing that makes sense to me is that we put all of our collective resources together and say to the country, given the fact that the climate has changed, and I'm saying, sir, without fear or contradiction, sir, none of us know. None of us knows what the future holds, but we know for certain that this is the beginning of the hurricane season and that we still have months of it to endure. And I suspect, sir, that our best position is to build relationships, form allies, sir, use the legitimacy that this government has created with the fisher folk, sir, because there is a legitimacy. There are very few fishermen, sir, who believe that this government is taking them for a ride. We have to use that legitimacy, sir, the authenticity that we have, sir, to develop a system now that allows us to say, over the next few years, this is how we're going to work together to be able to do it. Well, sir, we could have showed them plans for Bridgetown before Beryl. We had conversations around the insurance industry before Beryl. We were talking about transitioning from wooden vessels to the fiberglass vessels before Beryl. We were talking about completing the circle of enfranchisement and giving them access to ownership of brand new vessels before Beryl. So the idea that this is a knee-jerk reaction is simply not true. And that I believe, sir, that if we work together to be able to do the work, all of us in our own small ways, this bill, sir, that the Honourable Member for St. Michael West Central brought to this House is important. Allows us, sir, to put in place, sir, a serious response, a long-term preventative program for ships that cause pollution that eventually will stir the ocean to have 20-foot and 30-foot swells, sir, well above the barriers that we had. Sir, none of us could have predicted. So, sir, I want to close by supporting the Honourable Member. I want to commend him for the work that he continues to do in this space in relation to tourism, in relation to tourism generally, in relation to shipping more specifically, sir. For recognizing that in so doing this international work, we are prioritizing local people, sir. I want to say to the public as I close, sir, that the climate Barbados is facing, as is every country in the region, a climate crisis. I ask people, sir, for patience. I saw some comments when the water was off. During the hurricane, people were complaining, sir, to bear with the country. I saw some people comment, sir, when their electricity, when I was canvassing, sir, when I was visiting my constituents, one person was livid because their light hadn't yet returned. I had no light, no water, sir. But these things are to be anticipated now, sir. Our best response, sir, is to be what we used to be. You know your neighbor don't have little water, carry a little water for your neighbor. The neighbor need a light and you got 20, carry across 2 by your neighbor, sir. Allow us to work together as allies in here and out there to be able to do the work that we were voted in this place to do, sir. I commend the Honourable Member, sir, and I wish to give this bill my fullest support.
Honourable Member for Christchurch, West Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Following on from my colleague from St. Michael South, I want to give also my unreserved support to this bill. I want to start by saying that, and I want to start where the honourable member left off, because he ran as minister responsible for the blue economy, maritime affairs, with the baton like Usain Bolt. He ran the race in terms of revolutionizing the blue economy, and he ensured that there was victory in sight as it relates to having a sustainable industry from our maritime space. But I want to start by saying that the preservation of our environment is not a liberal or conservative challenge. It is common sense. And when I say so, Mr. Speaker, sir, I have been, for the last 2 years or so, speaking about the importance of preserving our maritime environment as minister responsible not only for the green economy, but for the blue economy. I've said on many times that if we are not cognizant of the way how we treat to our environment, whether green or blue, that someday, one day, we will be faced with the adversities. I know you are hearing about the existential threats of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. I want to add another one and call it the quaternary threat, and that is sea temperature increase. I call them the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Without a doubt, the increase of temperatures on our oceans. And, Mr. Speaker, sir, due to what happened on July the 1st, I want to say that Barbadians should not ever be defined by the destruction that took place with Beryl. Let us be defined, as the Member of Parliament for St. Michael's South said, by our resilience. Let us be defined by our selflessness, the way how we treat each other, the way how Barbadians were able collectively to come to the aid, not only to the fisher folk, but to their neighbors. Let us persevere. Let us unite. Let us be defined by love and care. Let us be defined by the maxims and sounds, all we, this is who we are. These are the things that should really define us after an event similar to Hurricane Beryl. We have a legislation before us that speaks to the way how we should green our shipping industry. That speaks to the way, basically, of how we should green our environment. It is known, the figures are there to support. The Minister, the Member of Parliament for St. Michael, West Central, he spoke limpidly about it, to the extent that that industry produces about 1.2 billion tons of carbon dioxide a year. About 3% of the total 40 billion or so tons that are produced by the world over. A significant figure. That same industry, Mr. Speaker, sir, produced about 13% of global nitrogen dioxide, harmful for the environment. Another 12% of sulfur dioxide from the burning of the fossil fuels and the emission thereof. Now, if this is not enough to contribute to our total greenhouse gas and the effects thereof. I have said for a long time, that unless there is a pardon, an absolute pardon in the way how we treat our environment, what the American National Hurricane Center is saying will be the norm. Will be the norm. And they are saying, for the first time, as the Member of Parliament for St. Michael South earlier alluded to, for the first time in the history of their tracking hurricanes, the first time that they have recorded a Category 4 hurricane in the month of June, late June, and Category 5 in the early part of July. The hurricane season has just started. On the horizon, they're equally predicting another 30-something systems, about 7 or 8 hurricanes. Very abnormal. And I want to say that the climate change is real. The climate change is real. I said already, only recently, that person said it was a misnomer. Well, it is not missing us no more. It is hitting us. It is hitting us smack in our homes. It is hitting us where it matters. It is destroying families. And there are a lot of hypotheses related to the reasons why this is happening. But the evidence is there. Pollution of our environment. I've spoken to Barbadians many times. Pollution of our environment. We know what is happening in the ocean. The acidification, the pollution, the destruction of our reefs. And those reefs that are being destroyed form an important cog of our carbon sink, our blue carbon sink. Not only are they responsible for the sequestration of the carbon dioxide, but the science is there to support the fact that they produce a dimethyl sulfide, a surface agent that is responsible for keeping the seabed cool, along with their ability to refract light and heat. It is known well over that the oscillations in not only the Pacific Ocean, but the Atlantic Ocean with low wind shear, all of these things intensify the effects of systems building up on our Atlantic Ocean. It is known, along with the extreme heat from our climate crisis. The trajectory is that this 1.5 and the 1.5 Celsius maximum that is used to stay alive, that it can only be reached on this current trajectory if we are able to reduce our greenhouse gases by probably around 80% or so. We can only reach this trajectory in the year 2040. That is the onerous foresight. And this is caused because of mankind's behavior. We started the industrial era 250 years ago. Since then, the loss of biodiversity is a shameful loss. We have lost, Mr. Speaker, sir, over 500 animal species, about 572 plant species. The insects that are threatened runs over 1 million. I am saying all these things add up to what we are experiencing. The fact that we are very known in this world for deforestation, desertification, the loss of arable land, the soils as we know it. All of these things that are responsible for capturing our carbon, we are destroying. And what happens? The ozone layer that protects us is destroyed, having increasing heat, and then increasing systems as an end result. It is not a good sight, Mr. Speaker, sir. And the warning is out there because, as the Member of Parliament what St. Michael South said earlier, this is the start of the hurricane season. And, Mr. Speaker, sir, what the Member of Parliament for St. Michael St. South West Central has brought to this House in terms of ensuring that we follow legislation, international legislation, and protocol, the Marpol Convention that started in 1997 in terms of reducing our emissions and our waste, is noble. It will basically save our environment. That's what it will do. And what are we doing, or what should we be doing in terms of advancing our industries and ensuring that the ships, Mr. Speaker, sir, that are above 150 tons or so, not the ones that are the 24 feet, ones that we are speaking of, that we have locally, we are talking about those big ships. And what is he saying? That there must be an unequivocal effort to green the energy sector. There must be. But along with greening, because we said at COP28 that we must have a phase down of our fossil fuel. But the only way you can have a successful phase down of fossil fuel is if equally you have the abatement technology. So we already started the conversation about building forward better based on what happened. And based on what happened, Mr. Speaker, sir, if I may have a little conversation about what took place. What happened, Mr. Speaker, sir, is an anomaly. It is. Since 1989, we've had that breakwater system with dolos that are interlocking in the port, in the fishing bay, the hub in Bridgetown, the basin, as a safe hub for our fisher folk. We've experienced Thomas in 2010. We've experienced Elsa in 2021, July the 2nd. And that hub, that breakwater system, protected the 200 plus vessels. What we saw with Beryl, albeit that when it passed, it was about 74 miles or so per hour. What we saw were swells, sea swells, that were over, some predicted, and this is the word of the fisher folk, there are the persons who are elected in the industry, above 30 feet in height, with extreme energy that broke the system that protected us for 35 years. Now, the conversation is about resilience. Resilience, resilience, resilience. And how we would do things better to ensure that we have, instead of a 5-ton dolo, that we have some that are 15 tons. And that the active principles to build them, that there are the dolos. The dolos are those interlocking T's that you will see as in the stones that we will see in the Bridgetown, above the Bridgetown market, which serves as a barrier for our fisher folk. That is all it is, the dolos. I know that my friend from St. James Central, he understands what are the dolos, but he just wants me to explain so that the public could. And I appreciate him for allowing me to elucidate. But those protective dolos, they form that barrier and that mechanism for the better part of 35 years. And a number of tropical storms. Unfortunately, as I said, with the abnormal swells that we had, the system was broken. The system was broken. What we are saying, and I want to, as I said, empathize again with the fisher folk, but to give them the rested assurance that this government will do everything in its power to ensure that the industry is able, once again, to punch above its weight. And I want to commend the fishermen for being resilient. But resilience for me can be broken down into three areas. Because what has happened must have a mental effect on persons in the industry. Must, without a doubt. So you must have that mental resilience. You must. So that you can deal with the issues, the emotional issues and the trauma that was experienced on the passing of Hurricane Beryl. Then there must be social resilience. We spoke to it, and we have said as a government that we must have those in that industry, the fisher folk and all those persons involved in the industry, must have a conversation, very lucid, about national insurance and other social securities. They must have a conversation about insurance in general. And we have said, going forward, that that must be part of the conversation. How they will insure their vessels, how they will be involved in the whole aspect of being business persons, how we can ensure that they're alone with persons, because it's not only those in the fishing industry. When we experienced Hurricane Elsa in 2021, the Minister of Housing could tell you, the Member of Parliament for St. George South would tell you that out of the 1,300 houses or so that were damaged or destroyed, that very few persons had home insurance, less than 5%. We have to change the culture. That is the conversation we must have now. We must change the culture, because the reality is that persons must be prepared. Persons must be prepared, and prepared in a way that they're able to build forward better after the tragedies and travesties. That is the conversation we must have with them. And then there must be infrastructure resilience, the physical resilience, the mechanical resilience. And so that is what government will ensure we do with the plan that's already in place to build structures, whether they are breakwaters, revetment and groins, and other resilient structures which are called coastal infrastructures from St. Lucie straight to the port and beyond. We are going to ensure that we do everything in our power to have these structures, infrastructure, in place so that the damage that we see in our coastal environment, that these damages could be mitigated. Because that's what resilience speaks to, mitigation and adaptation, and how we are going to mitigate. The planting of mangroves, a very important part of the conversation. I have been speaking about planting trees since I became minister. I will probably catch vocal fry speaking about it. The importance of planting trees. But we saw in St. James and St. Peter area, where those tree roots, those ones that ran horizontal and vertical, were able to hold up the structures and save our embankments. Those trees and the purposes of the trees to protect us from the erosion should be documented, because they serve their purpose. And I want to say that part of the plan is to ensure that we have those structures, those trees, those hedge roads on our beach line, and so that they can protect and do the things that they're supposed to do from these vagaries. I want to say, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the Prime Minister outlined the plan, the 4-point plan, in order to save our fisher folk and to ensure that we are able to build forward better, speaking from the benevolent fund right back down to the fact that our fisher folk will be given a 25% startup in terms of to ensure the businesses, whether they're repairs or to buy new boats. We have said that along with that, there will be a 30-year revolving fund at very low interest for our fisher folk. We also say that there will be a business relief initiative similar to what we did in interruption initiative, similar to what we did with persons in the COVID period. especially for those who did not pay their national insurance. That is something that we said we would do. And the Benevolent Fund, which has already been given a $250,000 US startup. We are going to do everything in our power as a government to ensure that the livelihoods of our fishermen are sustained, because it's about sustaining livelihoods. That is what it's about. But equally, we have said to them, we will not walk in front of them, far away from them, so that they will not be able to follow. We have said that we will not walk at the back, where they may not be able to lead in this discourse. We have said as a government that we will lead by the side in partnership with our fisher folk, because we understand full well that partnership is an important cog of sustainable development. And this government will partner with the fisher folk. We will allow them to be an integral part of the industry. We have said that we have very limited master boat builders in this country. We have indicated from before that we will ensure that we have those persons, even if we have to go outside the region, so that the industry could be rebuilt. We have said that even if it requires us to bring those boats in as new boats and to help in the industry, we have said that. We have insisted that new material must be used, whether it is the fiberglass. We have said already as a government that we must ensure the new technologies, because here lies the opportunity to improve our vessel, to improve our fleet. We have said already that we know that there will be limited abatement technology available for those in the industry, because there is a mad rush to have that technology all over the world. But in order to build forward better, what we are going to insist on in the industry is to have more resilient boats as well. And what we said, I know the Member of Parliament for St. Michael West Central spoke about the fact that we must have clean energy and alternatives. And that alternatives go from the methanol and ethanol that is now being projected as the new way of propelling those ships, because they have less emission of carbon dioxide, up to 80% or so less carbon dioxide emission. They are sulfur-free, so less sulfur dioxide in the atmosphere, which is essential and important for the whole fleet. We said that we can transition to biofuels if necessary, and this is a new way that we are looking at things. But in order to improve our boats and our ships, what we are looking at is the new technologies that are available to us with the artificial intelligence, which can allow, for instance, the boats using sonic and radars and all these fancy things to be able to ascertain that which is in the ocean. They will be able to understand different shipping techniques. We were able to improve, for instance, the ability to have a better catch based on fish locations. These are the types of things that we will be looking at going forward. And of course, the green hydrogen, as we know it, as an alternative to the fossil fuel. Mr. Speaker, sir, we must also look, we have thought about it. We have done it on land as the photovoltaic alternative and substitute rather than the fossil fuel. We've also said that when assisted boats, along with engine propellers, these are the things that we will have to look at if we are to carry the industry into the new dimension. This is what we have said as a government. We would say that it would demand of us to put our collective sinew along with the fisher folk, and we are doing. I want to commend the Member of Parliament for St. Michael West Central and say that government will be working with the fisher folk tirelessly to ensure that we do everything to build back this industry and build forward better, with better resilience, with the fisher folk on board, using new technologies to ensure the basic survival of the industry. Before I close, Mr. Speaker, I want to especially thank those persons who came out in their numbers I want to say a special thanks to those persons in the Coast Guards, the fisher folk who started the cleanup of the bay yesterday. They were on the job working with us from the Monday around 2 o'clock or so. We started the cleanup effort with NCC. They worked through the night. The general workers in the market. Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to say thanks to the NCC workers who work cleaning all the sand in Oistins Beer Garden. I want to say thanks to the CV workers who came out in their numbers and worked from morning till night. Morning till night, giving of their effort to ensure that the garden is once again the most pristine place in Barbados so visitors and everybody alike can enjoy. I want to spare a special thanks, and I don't like to single out those in the private sector because that is not what we do as a norm, but to Heinz Transport. I want to say to him and his staff a special thanks, a heartfelt thanks from the bottom of my heart. He was there he and his staff was there from the Monday after we got the all clear. They are still working. They're still working, and they are doing a tremendous job in order to partner with us so we can have those vessels out and start to clear up that area. I want to say that this is the true spirit of who we are as a people, coming together in the face of adversity to ensure the basic survival of our people. We cannot have those songs, this is who we are, and all of we, and not having those songs and those maxims and those actions being reflected in how we react, especially react to each other. And I want to say the only way resilience will make sense is if each one of us put our collective efforts together to ensure the basic survival of each other. It must be a collective effort. It must speak to who we are as Barbadians. It must be part of our ethos. It must be part of our genetics. It must be who we are as a people. So I'm thankful that Barbadians responded in their numbers. They are still making generous donations. And I want to say to everybody that they have the rested and calm assurance from this minister that we will do everything as a government and certainly as a people to ensure that the fisher folk and the fishermen will once again sail to new horizons. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member St. James Central.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I really want to make a very brief intervention on this very important matter. And permit me, sir, to begin by signaling my wholehearted support, full-throated and wholehearted support for the matter which is before this House, so ably piloted by the Honourable Member for St. Michael West Central. Mr. Speaker, it has been very clear that, simply put, we are taking that which is now internationally accepted by way of convention and embedding it into domestic law with respect to the preservation of the maritime space and the maritime environment of Barbados. Beyond that, however, I think that there is something highly consequential and momentous about this debate, because what effectively we have done, sir, is to be able to transcend the almost instinctive and perhaps cultural practice of finding an artificial divide of a political nature. And we have been able to speak, sir, as a parliament with one voice on a matter which, if you drill down, you will recognize, sir, is a matter of existential importance for the people of this country, the society of this country, the economy of this country, and its culture as well. And Mr. Speaker, sir, much has been said about the preservation of the environment, and I do not want to belabor that, but I do think that it is necessary, sir, to point out to this House that we are having a debate where there is an intersection, sir, between the vital issue of resilience, as we just heard the honourable member who preceded me speak to. The point of resilience intersects, Mr. Speaker, sir, with the question of how do we finance the efforts at resilience. And quite frankly, Mr. Speaker, sir, it must intersect as well, as this legislation ably points out, with the regulatory infrastructure that must be put in place in order to mandate and to police effectively the new environment that must constitute Barbados. Mr. Speaker, sir, I am heartened to be on the floor of this House today, to be able to participate in this debate, as I said, because in my judgment, it is highly consequential that the Democratic Labour Party opposition and the government of Barbados have been able to find common ground on this matter. Why do I say so, sir? I say so, sir, because of the fact that in 2023 and 2022, this country would have heard much about the issue of debt and about the issue of the level of debt in Barbados not being properly managed, Mr. Speaker, sir. And we have said repeatedly that there is absolutely no licentiousness and lawlessness and recklessness on the part of the government of Barbados, but that we go to international meetings, and indeed, Mr. Speaker, sir, we go to international partners and to the international marketplace because of the fact that we have to rebuild Barbados, not just deconstruct and reconstruct in a theoretical way, but in a physical and infrastructural way. We have to rebuild this country, sir, in a manner that reflects the need for it to be a resilient economy, a sustainable economy, Mr. Speaker, sir, and that can only be done by way of financing that which is properly called the adaptation process. Mr. Speaker, we did not fight these battles without a measure of success internationally. So that even when the tongues of criticism wagged in Barbados, we were able, sir, to be part of a grouping which persuaded the international community that there must be a loss and damage fund, which is really a global financial package created, sir, to ensure that you can rescue an economy and a society, in fact, a country such as Barbados, impacted as we were only a week ago, that we could be rescued, sir, and that we could go about the process of rehabilitation of the sectors within the economy that have been damaged or devastated as a result of a catastrophe. That is what the effort internationally to have a loss and damage fund was about. That effort, sir, was accepted globally, and the fund itself has started to be monetized. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, we are at that point which we hoped we would never come to, where we have a sector within the economy of Barbados, the fisheries sector specifically, virtually devastated as a result of catastrophe. Mr. Speaker, the question is the cost that must be met. The first point that I want to make, sir, is that the government has policy space. We have policy space, Mr. Speaker, sir, because within the World Trade Organization, of which we are a part, we are able to function under the rules that govern subsidies and countervailing measures to ensure that we can set aside resources that will not put us in a position where we have been able to subsidize our fishery sector to the point where we have made it a larger sector than it was at the time of the hurricane, but that we can subsidize the rebuild of the fishery sector to the point where it was when the hurricane came. That, sir, has been ably expatiated upon by the honourable member who just spoke and other honourable members who have touched on this issue, and I need not go into that. The specifics are now in the public domain, sir. Let us understand, however, that it doesn't just begin and end with the fisher folk, but we must also look at the installations, the physical infrastructure, the damaged jetties, Mr. Speaker, sir, the infrastructure in Bridgetown, which was badly beaten and battered during the course of the hurricane. The loss of equipment. It is all well and good to talk about repairing a boat or replacing a boat, but the equipment must also be replaced, sir. That too comes at a cost, and there must be policy space allowed to a government that exists under the rules governing the World Trade Organization's members, and therefore, sir, we have that policy space. I want to make another point on this, sir. The fund to which I spoke globally, a loss and damage fund, created out of a need to rescue and rehabilitate a country or impacted sectors within a country as a result of a catastrophe, is a work in progress. Mr. Speaker, sir, now that we have finally come to a point where the opposition and the government can speak with one voice, I want to urge my friend who sits in the chair of the leadership of the opposition that this is a golden opportunity for us not just to do so within the four corners of this particular debate, but, sir, let us do so now as we raise this issue on behalf of this region and in the face of the global community. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is, as has been said, the first storm in a very long season. It has done substantial damage not only here, but on several other islands of the Caribbean. We are all in a similar position. The fact of the matter is, sir, that the question must now be asked in the international community, who is financing and where will the finances come from, sir, to make sure that we adequately capitalize the loss and damage fund? And where should this money be coming from? This particular piece of legislation, which is before the House, sir, speaks to the international community's acceptance of the fact that there must be positive steps taken legislatively in order to protect and to ensure that our environment, sir, protect our environment and ensure that the environment is free from pollution in the maritime space. It follows logically, therefore, that the maritime space, sir, and those who operate within the marine space must also now be asked, what is their contribution? What role are they playing in this matter of raising funds globally so that when catastrophes come, there can be rehabilitation of economies, rehabilitation of countries? The truth of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, sir, that the conversation we've been having has been about large-scale polluters in the North Atlantic in particular, and in Asia, contributing, those people who are the industrially advanced countries who have contributed to the global warming, now putting money in a loss and damage fund. But we have to recognize, sir, that private capital is out there as well. That there is a community of people, sir, who make obscene profits in the business of oil and gas. There is a community of people, Mr. Speaker, sir, who make obscene profits in the business, sir, of shipping, maritime transport. But when we look at the maritime transport and the speed with which it is transforming itself into a green sector, an energy efficient sector, sir, we realize that they are lagging far behind. We got people, let me make it easy for Barbadians to understand. We got people in board houses in Barbados who have made sure that they got a bicycle that is electric. Mr. Speaker, sir, they have made transformation. They have started to transform their means of mobility. We got people in board houses in Barbados who have photovoltaic cell on top of the roof. They have started to transform their vulnerability. They're transformed away from the vulnerability. Mr. Speaker, sir, you cannot have a major global industrial sector like international shipping, like the cruise sector, of which Barbados is a beneficiary in part, but they extract more from the Barbados economy than they put into it, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, sir, we cannot expect that they forever will be free of having to carry some burden towards the transformation process. And part of that transformation process, sir, has to be contributing as a result of the large profits you are making to the global effort by way of a loss and damage fund, which, as I said, is set up to rescue and rehabilitate economies after catastrophe, such as that which we experienced. So part of this conversation, sir, is also not just about the legislation to make sure that there is avoidance of pollution, but there must also be, in the conversation, sir, contribution, sir, to the rehabilitation of the economy, and that contribution, sir, must also include those people in the maritime transport sector. The maritime transport sector, sir, has to be seen for what it is. It is a sector which is earning vast profits, but it is moving way too slowly along the road of transition. If you look at the cruise sector, sir, you will see that there are ships now being requisitioned. That there are ships, sir, which for the first time will be carrying hydrogen cells, but that they're not going to be in the marketplace until 2030. That at this stage they are prototype. But sir, we've been talking about this problem for a long, long time. And all the time we're talking about the problem, sir, others are profiteering but not moving with a nimbleness. And that is the message that has to be made in the international community. That yes, Barbados welcomes these types of these vessels. We welcome the benefit. We welcome the contribution to our economy. But Mr. Speaker, sir, we feel that there is also an obligation on the part of the international cruise sector. That there's an obligation on the part of the international oil and gas transportation sector. That transportation is in the maritime space as they move the oil tankers across the ocean. That there's a requirement, Mr. Speaker, sir, for the ships which are just doing ordinary commercial freighting, that they too must be part of the transition. Equally, Mr. Speaker, we have to say to the world that that which is happening in aviation is going too slowly. And as well, we hear about the prototypes, but there are no planes that are flying about in this region that are green. All of them burning the same fossil fuel. All of them polluting in the same way. And so the conversation, now that we have finally come to a point where a Democratic Labour Party leader is speaking with the same voice as the government does, on the assumption that he understands more about this than just what is blandly on the legislative page at present, then, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is necessary that we invite this new face of the Democratic Labour Party to speak with us globally on this issue. Now, Mr. Speaker, sir, I also want to speak a little bit on the challenge of adaptation. I heard the Honourable Member just now who took his seat just prior to me speaking about the dolos and explaining what they are. And fact of the matter is, sir, when those were created at the Bridgetown Fisheries Complex, that was 30-odd years ago. And, sir, those were 3-ton protective barriers. 5-ton protective barriers. What we now understand is that though they were state-of-the-art 20 and 30 years ago, we have been taught by Beryl that which we invested in 20 and 30 years ago to create a fisheries harbor that kept us safe, sir, for several storms that passed through here, Elsa and all the others that came, sir, that it is today not adequate and that we got to look at 15 tons. That's the reality. And the question of how it is to be costed must be part of the conversation that we have. Which is why, sir, I began by saying that we are now at an important point. We are at a momentous moment in this parliament where we have an opposition saying it is not taking issue with us. And I am urging that the opposition now see this not only in terms of the bland letter on the legislative page, but that the opposition see it in its holistic sense. Its holistic sense, Mr. Speaker, sir, is that if we are to replace the 3-ton dolos with 15-ton dolos, it must come at a cost. It is part of the national adaptation effort, and that national adaptation effort, sir, has to be costed, and it has, therefore, sir, to mean that the government must find the resources. And therefore, the conversation about debt must be a conversation that is more mature. Not just to point a finger at government and say, you have debt, but to understand why we incur the debt. That the debt is incurred, sir, not out of lawless and licentious behavior, but, sir, it is a debt that is incurred, sir, to build out the capacity of this country so that we can moderate harm to our people, reduce the vulnerability of sectors such as the fisheries sector, Mr. Speaker, sir. Ensure that we have a closure of the knowledge gap, that our people can understand, can live, feel, and appreciate the reality of the new environment within which we exist. The resilience that must be built, sir, built out is infrastructural as well as it is institutional, and very often, sir, will come at substantial cost. I want to speak, sir, to one final issue, and that is the question, sir, of insurance. Now, much has been said about the need for boats to have been insured, and I want to agree with all that has been said. But I am also, sir, a man of very practical affairs, and I understand, in part, the challenge in the mind of the operator of the boat or the owner of the boat, because traditionally that has been replicated not only with the fishing community. I was Minister of Small Business. I was Minister of Commerce when we had COVID. It was me who had to deal with the business interruption, sir. And when we gave people $1,500, whether you were a cosmetologist and a hairdresser, whether you were a barber or a taxi operator, whether you were a fisherman with your own same boat, Mr. Speaker, so all were in the same boat. Literally, the people were, and figuratively, people were saying, well, I am not sure that I want government to be involved in my business. I don't trust government. I feel that they're up to trick me. They want to find out how much money I make, etc., etc. That is part of the mentality that we must now fight. That is part of the financial maturation of this country, building out the maturity of our people financially so that they understand the very important role that not only keeping records of your personal business, but keeping records, sir, and running the business in an appropriate way so that you set aside a little bit of the money to pay the insurance. But equally on the other side, sir, I understand some of the challenges from the insurance sector. And there are those who will say to you that the insurance really traditionally is about risk and a promise to cover an actual loss. The typical insurance premium, sir, is only going to be indemnified after there's an investigation of the loss and an assessment of the damage. And if a fishing boat disappears at sea, sir, 3 miles at sea, 3 miles out to sea, in 60, 70,000 feet of water, I'm not easily going to be able to do the investigation. I'm not easily going to be able to do an assessment. Therefore, sir, I'm going to have a challenge in doing the indemnification, putting the money in your pocket. And that's where the insurers are. Don't mind all the pretty talk you can hear. So we have to find now practical solutions. And there are methods, sir, of treating to the sector that I think we must now talk about. The approach, sir, which has been used in other parts of the world, is to use parametric insurance coverage, where you say there is a predetermined issue that you want to treat to. In this particular case, what we want to do is to make sure that we don't lose a whole fleet because of a storm. So we simply say there is a predetermined precaution that we want to guard against, a predetermined issue we want to have a precaution against. That if there is a hurricane, category 1 or above, then in those circumstances, any losses to boats caused as a result of there being damage in that storm, sir, will be covered by this parametric insurance coverage, sir, which is going to speak to a defined event. And once that event is triggered, then you have the compensation done, freeing you up, sir, from a lot of the heavy bureaucratic problems involved in doing the independent analyses and the investigation on a case-by-case basis and so on and so forth, which I think have contributed in some measure. I ain't just going to come down on the fisher folk. I believe it is on both sides. Yes, the insurance industry too has been reluctant. And they were reluctant, sir, because of the fact, as I say, part of what the contract of insurance is about is that before I pay you out any money, I need to do my investigation. And when you both gone at sea 3-4 miles out, I find it very difficult to pay out because I can't investigate how it sank. You show up in front of me and tell me somebody rescue you. Well, that's all well and good, but I still got to work out what's in it for me. So, sir, I think that we have to have that kind of conversation. And to the extent that we are prepared now to treat to the reality of what has transpired as an opportunity for this country to take fresh guard. Take fresh guard. And to reassess where we are and look at opportunities, sir, to do things better. We got to rebuild that fleet, but we have to rebuild the fleet in a manner that is resilient and sustainable, and therefore green. And we have, Mr. Speaker, sir, to introduce practices within the fishing industry that ensure resilience and ensure that they can be sustainable. And part of that, sir, is the conversation around the way in which we insure the fleet. And, Mr. Speaker, sir, the way in which we manage the fleet. And I think that those are the opportunities that the country now has economically. As I said to you, sir, the rules which govern the WTO is under the subsidies and countervailing measures provisions make it abundantly clear that you can't subsidize to the point where you got a fleet twice as large as the one you now have, or the one you lost. But the fact of the matter is, sir, you can take it to the point where it was at the point of the storm, and that you can ensure that the vessels are not only replaced, but that those pieces of equipment which were vital to the operation of the vessel can be replaced, and that the infrastructure can be rebuilt and replaced. And that is really where Barbados is now. So, sir, I say this simply to say that I'm satisfied that we have the policy space. I am satisfied, sir, that we have already articulated a very clear policy on how we can directly impact the fishing community. I am satisfied, sir, that we can go further towards the infrastructural rehabilitation of the supporting environment within the sector. And, Mr. Speaker, sir, I am satisfied as well that there is an opportunity by way of parametric insurance coverage that we can now speak to how we insure the fisheries fleet in Barbados. I also want to say, Mr. Speaker, sir, that I believe we have an opportunity as a people, not as a parliament, but as a people, because it is now clear that it does lie, I know I said this mischievously, it lies within the ability of the leader of the opposition to see the wisdom of what government has been trying to achieve globally, to understand, sir, that the battle we fight to ensure that there is a loss and damage fund globally of trillions of dollars so that states like those in the Caribbean can access money at a time like this, when there's sheer devastation in St. Vincent, sheer devastation in the Grenadines, sheer devastation in Grenada. And, Mr. Speaker, sir, that we are in a position to recognize that this matter, the ability to fight these battles, cannot be done without also bringing into the discussion the way in which we manage debt, and the importance, sir, of recognizing that there will be and there must be access to funding for us to build out the adaptation that is necessary. And that if we borrow, Mr. Speaker, sir, we need to have the support of our opposition parties, which are there to represent people too, and that we are going to say to the international community with one voice. Because we will not always be the government. One day they may be as well. But the vulnerability of the country does not change when the government changes. and that we speak with one voice to say, let us access loans on a longer tenor. Let us be able to have lower interest rates. Accept that it is wrong to say you want to build a boardwalk in Cornwall, on the coast of England, and that on the coast of England you're going to pay 3% interest to build your boardwalk, but if you're borrowing down here, you're going to pay at 14% because we are vulnerable. But we're being penalized for our vulnerability because we want to build out capacity to overcome the vulnerability. What madness is that? And therefore, sir, yes, a vulnerability very often caused by them. So, sir, that is why we need an opposition that speaks with one voice with the government. It is a golden opportunity, sir. I think, as I said to you before, this is perhaps a momentous occasion for the Parliament, and I want it to be registered that I have urged formally and invited the support of my learned and he said, is it industrious? He describes himself as an industrious friend, the leader of the opposition. I'm obliged to you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Michael West Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me also take this opportunity to thank all honourable members who spoke in this debate. Let me also thank the Leader of the Opposition for his very kind words and very generous remarks, sir. I'm happy, I'm very pleased that we are all at one on this bill. And as the last speaker indicated, that pretty much nobody can find fault, and certainly there's no divide in respect of the bill. Mr. Speaker, it is important, though, that I respond to the Leader of the Opposition in respect of the reefs, in respect to the point he raised. And of course, when you're a Leader of the Opposition here, you have to respond to any questions or concerns raised by the Leader of the Opposition. It's a convention of Parliament. In respect of the destruction of the reefs, let me simply say to the Leader of the Opposition and to other honourable members that the Coastal Zone Management Unit is really the agency responsible for addressing coral reef protection. And of course, this is also coming in respect of the bill that the honourable member for Christchurch West Central will shortly be introducing into Parliament, and that is the Integrated Coastal Management Act. I'm told that the bill is currently with the CPC, and obviously that bill should be brought to this honourable chamber very, very shortly. And on that occasion, I'm sure the honourable member for Christchurch West Central, who's also the minister responsible, will have an opportunity to present. Of course, I'm very clear I do not cross ministerial lines, but I felt it was necessary in response to the Leader of the Opposition to let him know that the Coastal Zone Management Union is addressing the whole issue of reef protection, and that the Honourable Minister will very shortly bring to Parliament the Integrated Coastal and Marine Management Act. Let me also indicate to the Leader of the Opposition that the marine hydraulic trailer for the temporary boat haul out of the shallow draft is not the one for Oystons, Honourable Member for Christchurch South. This is one that we procured to replace the obsolete one at the shallow draft. The new Tammy, as I'm told, it's referred to lift and trailer, are being acquired to assist with the lift-out capacity for small boats, including the fishing boats. Of course, it's a portable device, and that obviously is reserved for the management of the port to deal with. For the benefit of honourable members, the Tiami lift is a piece of equipment that straddles the vessel and lifts it out of the water for repairs and, of course, for refurbishment. But I do take the point that as we continually build out the port, we will have to make such further investments. Let me also, for the clarity of debate, remind the Honourable Chamber that the amended version of the Marpole Annex 6 is incorporated in the bill, and it's not the original 1997 version, because as you will well appreciate, Mr. Speaker, the IMO continually updates these IMO instruments so that the most recent version of the Marpole Appendix 6 is the one that we are going to give force of law to in respect of the convention. Let me also thank the honourable member for St. Michael's South. He spoke to the whole issue of generating additional revenue from the ship registry, and that is a fact. In fact, very shortly, I should be in a position to announce to the cabinet the fees that we will be collecting as a result of the ship registry. I know that there is additional work to be had there, and we will certainly be undertaking additional work. But the bills that we are bringing to this honourable chamber would allow us and certainly give us opportunities for increased revenue for Barbados, especially from the ship registry and other areas that we are going to explore and exploit, of course, as part of the remit, in respect of the remit, in bringing these bills to the Parliament. It's not only about bringing a bill to the Parliament to say that we are compliant with IMO regulations. It is more about us securing our future, and it is about us positioning ourselves to take advantage of the maritime space and to ensure that we also earn from that space, notwithstanding our commitment to ensure that we mitigate the climate crisis. In respect of the post-hurricane relief operations at the port, let me also inform the Honourable Chamber that as part of the post-work requirement, the port cruise terminal, I can safely say that it was open. It remains open. We were fortunate that we had a cruise ship in Barbados last Friday, days after Hurricane Beryl, and we were able to process over 2,000 passengers, I've been informed. And obviously they had an opportunity to go through and utilize the facilities at the port without any person even observing that there would have been a lot of debris, certainly in the car park and surrounding areas near the cruise terminal. So we were very fortunate, and as I indicated before, I want to record thanks to the port management and the workers for the incredible efforts that they had to put in order to ensure that the facility was ready. Of course, cargo operations resumed the following day after Hurricane Beryl, 7 a.m., so there was no issue there. Let me also inform the House that the revetment at the area at the Bridgetown Port, that is the area closest to the car park where the taxi drivers will park and where they have their facilities. Obviously, there's been some damage to the bathroom facility there. We have to investigate the structural damage. Once we investigate the structural damage, we're in a better position to report. But the area of the revetment is cause for concern. I'm aware that the port has engaged the services of an engineering company to look at it. Somebody's worked with them before to give them the advice on how we can obviously improve the revetment. And in addition to that, we are also going to have to consider whether or not it's not in our best interest as we prepare to become a more resilient nation that we should perhaps have a seawall in that area. I thought I would mention those things, but you know, Barbados is a very fortunate country in the sense that we've been very early on, we've been beneficiaries of expertise coming from, for example, the scholarly research into the marine environment and, of course, land. We are all familiar with the Bel Air's Research Institute that set up in Barbados in 1954. still here doing some great work for us. And of course, we are also remember Barbados' contribution to the reduction of fossil fuels. You recall that a late Prime Minister who served in this country and in the constituency of St. Thomas, Prime Minister JMG Adams, was so impressed with the performance of solar water heaters that he immediately back in 1980 provided a solar tax rebate to homeowners for the installation of the system and also gave exemptions. But he also had imposed increased import duties on the importation of gas and other electric heaters. So that we have a history of also dealing, I thought, of dealing with such matters as relates to the reduction in fossil fuels. I thought it would be important to obviously refer to the Barriers Institute as well as one of our great leaders, the late, great JMG Adams. Mr. Speaker, I don't think there's much more. The Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central, in his element, of course, these are matters that only, well, he's very familiar with, and he would have waxed warmly on these matters, and therefore there's nothing more for me to add. Let me also thank the Honourable Member for St. James Central, who contributed to the debate and obviously gave additional details with respect to the bill and of course the work that he's doing in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to help us. As I indicated, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we are working very closely with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to ensure that the ratification of all of these agreements that we sign, that they're deposited obviously with those international agencies. Mr. Speaker, I think it's also, we are at a good point in this Parliament today because we are at one in respect of controlling the atmospheric pollution from ships entering Barbados, those that are at sea and those that are berthed at port. Because we are at one, because we are focusing on clean air quality, we are focusing on sustainable tourism practices. We're talking about environmentally safe and energy efficient ship operations. We're talking about the fight against climate change, particularly climate crisis that we have, and of course, fulfilling our mandate to ensure that we have a safe, secure, and efficient shipping on clean oceans. So I don't think there's much more for me to add, Mr. Speaker, but again, to thank all our members who participated in the debate, to thank all those at the ministry who would work beyond the call of duty to ensure that we prepare the policy instruments, took the cabinet papers to the cabinet for further discussion. And of course, the Chief Parliamentary Counsel and the team within the Office of the Attorney General for helping us to put together all of the complex pieces of maritime legislation. We owe them a debt of gratitude for all that they continue to do, especially in these very complex measures. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
Question is that the bill be read a second time. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. Honourable members in James Central.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I would like to move the suspension of the House until 3:30 p.m. Second. Huh? Oh.
Question is that this honourable chamber be suspended until 3:30 p.m. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands suspended until 3:30 p.m.